Welcome to today's episode on Fordify. I am so excited. I've got a special guest and friend and colleague, my good buddy, Shep Hyken. Shep, welcome to Fordify Live.
Hey, Ford, great to see you. It's great to be here. You're looking good.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, I know we talked earlier in the green room that we're both running on a little bit of sleep, but we're going to have a lot of fun because today's a topic that is certainly essential for any organization, whether you're a franchise organization, an association, B2B, B2C. It's how do you create amazing customer experiences? Because, you know, one of the things that you've always been famous for is this concept of turning misery into magic. And so that's the topic that we're going to explore today. We've got a lot of different things related to that. And I've got a few things we're going to share over the time. But if you've got any questions in the just type them into the comments. We're going to be answering these questions live, and we're going to be interacting with you live. We're on multiple platforms right now. So anyway, again, let's welcome you to the show.
Hey, great to be here. Excited. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oh, man. Well, you know, I know you want to talk about moments of misery turning into magic. And I think what we should do, and by the way, I have a very specific 5-step process that's simple, it's basic, but it turns that around when you have that complaint, that problem, the friction. But before we do that, I think we should talk about maybe some, you know, it's like you can't have a plant until you put the seeds in the ground, right?
Yeah, I always say you can't prescribe until you diagnose, right? And so I think the real point is, as we get into that, and we'll get into your 5-step process, and everybody, you want to stay tuned for this process. I actually, Alex is sitting offside my camera here, but I actually in my drawer have that card because I need it if we have a fumble. Everybody in my office has the 5-step, but we'll get to that in a minute. I want to explore a question that comes up, which is, you know, for a while it was customer service, and then it became customer experience, and then it became, you know, all these people, we got all these, well, I'll call them millennials for lack of a better term. You know, customer experience became a really big thing. Explain to me the demystify this for me. Customer service, customer experience, you know, what do our listeners, who are mainly business owners or executives, people that own businesses, what do they need to really understand that is going to make their businesses better and their lives better?
Okay, first of all, I want to talk about 3 things. Number 1, the definition of customer service and experience and what the differences are. Thank you. Number 2, I want to talk about creating an amazing experience and why that word amazing isn't about over the top wow. It has a completely different meaning, but this is what your customer will say. I love them. They're amazing. I'm going to tell you exactly how that works. Ding. Hit me a ding. Good. And number 3, before we could talk about moments of misery turning into magic, you need to understand what a moment of magic is.
Right.
Fair?
Yeah, that's fair
Ding,
enough. Yep.
Ding.
Okay, got it.
Ding.
We got it.
All right. So let's start with the first one. Service and experience. Customers today, many of them don't know the difference. It is what it is, and it doesn't matter. Some people call it a customer service experience. Many years ago, customer service was customer service. It was what happened when there was a problem. You called customer service and they fixed the problem, managed the complaint, answered your questions. And then it started to morph into more than just that department, so to speak. I actually refer to customer service as a philosophy, not a department. It should be ingrained in everybody's brain. It's part of the culture of a company. And then what happened is somebody really smart started to call it customer experience because it seemed like a sexier word, and it was. And then smarter people said, well, experience is more than just service. It's everything from even if you're not dealing directly with the person and you receive a package and the experience you have opening it up. You're on a website and there's a touch point. So it's every interaction or touch point that customer has. Is it being managed for the best experience? Sometimes it's people to people. Sometimes it's digital. So what's happened is your customers don't care. I actually just wrote an article that is going to be released in the next couple of weeks that says customer service, customer experience, your customers don't care what you call it. It is what it is. So that's number 1, is to know that it really doesn't make any difference. Now, for our purposes internally, it probably makes a little difference.
Right.
When we look at experience, we look at it from end to end. So we want a journey map. We want to explore what every touch point the customer has. We want to know behind the scenes what drives that touch point. And when we start to analyze those interaction points at the top and the points that drive it inside, I call those impact points. We start to look at the whole journey, and that is your experience that you're creating. And also, it's not just outside customers, it's inside. You've got your employees. You're going to start hearing the term employee experience if you haven't already heard it.
Right.
So you've got the CX and the EX.
Right.
You put them together, it spells sex.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Not SEX, CEX.
So I was on with a guest last week, and we had adult language, and when we got done, I had to put a disclaimer. So I'm going to be careful today on this one, so I don't have to put the parental advisory disclaimer on it. So we have CX and we have EX. Keep going.
Yeah, and my friend Jason Bradshaw actually wrote a book about sex, CEX.
Right.
And when you look at it that way, wait, did he misspell something? No, it's customer and employee experience.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's especially
on the inside, it's felt on the outside by customers.
Absolutely. And that's one of the biggest things is that, organizations today are struggling to find, attract, and engage and retain their staff. Now, you said there was 3 points. Did we cover all three? Because I know I probably derailed you.
So that's number one is
that's
service and experience.
Okay.
Number two is let's talk about customer amazement. And that is my definition of amazement is not about being over the top and, delivering the most incredible service you've ever had.
Right.
When you have that opportunity, and Ford, we know what you do. Like you help people with their marketing,
right?
And you're gonna, maybe there's a glitch on a website. My website's down, and your people work at midnight to get it fixed. That's over the top, right?
Right.
But day in and day out, you can't wait for those mistakes to fall in your lap to be amazing. You got to be amazing all the time. But what does that really mean? If I'm a customer and I have an expectation, if you meet that expectation every single time, I'm going to say you're amazing. And by the way, the expectations that most people have, they're normal. It's like when I call you and you call me back in an hour, I go, hey, wow, that was quick. That's what I hoped for. That's what I expected. I didn't have to wait 3 days for you to call me back. I'll make it simple.
Right.
Most of the time, you either are meeting the expectation or you're the tiniest bit above average. So Horst Schulze, who was the first president and co-founder of the Ritz-Carlton organization, said that if you want, this was my terminology, amazing, but we talked about it. He says, you don't have to be over the top. I said, well, how much better than average do you have to be? And he thought about it and he said, like maybe 10% above average. I go, okay, you're like me, a little above average. And what is a little above average? He goes, well, the example I like to share is if you check in or you walk into my hotel, you get out of the taxi or the limo or whatever, and the bellman looks at the luggage tag and says, Mr. Hyken? Yeah, well, welcome to the Ritz. Using my name is a tiny bit above average. You get up to the front desk and that bellman's called the front desk or with, maybe on the radio to say, hey, Mr. Hyken's walking up to the front desk. And I walk up there and like, they're waiting for me. Hey, Mr. Hyken, yeah, we have your reservation up in front. Wow, I didn't even have to do anything. It's there. So that sounds crazy. Where's the restroom? Let me take you there and show you rather than tell you, go down there, make a right, another left. You'll see it on the right side. Little things like that add up. And that was his version. So if you think about it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 is bad, 5 is amazing, 3 is average. 1, 2 is fair, 3 is average, 4 is good, and 5 is amazing. If you're a tiny little bit better than average, consistently and predictably, you're going to get 5s most of the time from your customers, guests, clients, whatever you want to call them.
Okay, so let's make sure that the listeners really get that clear takeaway. So it's not about being over the top and wowing, although that's always great if you can do that.
If it falls in your lap.
Right, it falls in your lap, take it. But it's really to be competitive. I won't say the bar is so low, but the bar to be exceptional and to create amazing experiences is just doing the little things consistently time over time and teaching everybody on your staff, right? Because one of the challenges that organizations have is they think that customer service is a department. And it's not, right? Isn't everybody involved? Everybody, like you said earlier, every touch point in the customer journey?
Yeah. And so to that point, and I want to emphasize, you use the word consistent. It has to be consistent and eventually predictable. When it's happening all the time, it's what the customer expects. Number 2 point you made is it's everybody's job. And the example I love to share is that Well, and Jan Carlson, many years ago, who was president of Scandinavian Airlines, came up with this idea. I'll share in a moment of truth, which leads to magic. But he said, everybody's involved at some level on taking care of the passenger of his airline. If you're not dealing directly with the passenger, you're supporting somebody that is, or you're part of a process. And so I talk about the guy who when you go to check your bags and it goes down the conveyor belt, there's somebody down there. They look at the bag, they scan the tag, they make sure it goes into this pile, and that pile gets put onto a cart. The cart gets taken out to the airplane. There's like 4, 5, 6 people that are going to touch your bags at the airport who never see the passenger. But if they don't do their job and that bag doesn't get on the right plane or on a plane at all, guess what? They've made this moment of misery. They've created a failure in the process, and they never saw the customer, yet they have huge impact on that experience. And I'll add, they also have an internal customer, somebody they're servicing. Because if you lose your bag, Ford, and I don't know about you, but I always say there's 2 kinds of luggage on an airplane. There's the overhead luggage, and then there's the lost luggage that gets that you check. But here's my
that's
point.
right.
If nobody ever walks into the baggage office that's right next to the baggage carousel to say, hey, I just want to let you guys know I got my bag. You guys are amazing.
Oh, no, that's me, because I'm always the guy with tact and skill. So that's exactly how I am.
They actually go into the office to complain and say their luggage is not here. Now, whose fault was it? It's somebody in the ground crew who never saw the passenger. And at that point, he's failed his passenger, the outside customer, and the baggage claim person who now has to deal with me, the internal customer. So people sometimes they have both internal and external customers. Sometimes they're on the front line that only deal with the customer. Sometimes they're behind the scenes, never see a customer, but they're part of that process. So real important to remember that.
You can't hardly turn on any medium on any social media or any TV without seeing customer fails now. We're all walking around with 4K cameras in our pockets, and being able to capture it. And so what advice would you give a business owner who maybe has, a couple, just off the top, this again, for those of you listening, this is not scripted. We are live. This is Shep and I talking about customer service. If you've joined us live, it's about how do you create amazing customer experiences. But what are some of the things?
Tell them about the 5 steps. Let's not forget it. We're going.
Well, hey. Now wait a minute. I'm not going to forget about the 5 steps. They're right here. So they're in my hand. So we'll come back to the 5 steps, okay, Mr. Hyken. But the point is, I would like our listeners to know what are 1 or 2 things that they can do right now, and that they can put down as a checklist that they can go explore. Like maybe mystery shop how their phones are answered, or like what are a couple things that they need to be paying attention to, some high level executive categories. I need to do A, B, and C.
Well, I think you just hit one on the head. I think you need to know what the experience is. And if there's a way to mystery shop it, call yourself an undercover boss, whatever you want to do. In my most recent book titled I'll Be Back, How to Get Customers to Come Back Again and Again, I use an example of a gentleman named William at Microsoft, who was an executive and went down and listened in on the calls and actually took some of the support calls himself. And there was a lady that said, I want to talk to that person who just helped me again. He was so helpful. And it was William, as in Bill Gates himself, taking customer support calls. Some people will pick up the phone and call their own department to see how long they have to wait, what the experience is. By the way, if you're going to do this, do it like multiple times. Don't do it like at 2 a.m. when nobody else is calling. No, do it at peak times. You want to experience what your customers experience. So you're mystery shopping yourselves. That's great. Do the journey map. And for those that don't know it, that's a very simple, it's like from the beginning of a customer who's thinking about using you to the first time they do business. That's a journey. Okay. Every interaction point, map it out. And then what does it look like if they have a problem? What do they have to do to get to customer support? What does it look like if they're a repeat customer? Because it's going to be a little bit different because they don't have to go through the same process as the first time customer to learn about you, go on your website. And by the way, website, touch point, really important that it's intuitive, it's easy. The reason Amazon has created such an amazing digital experience is they've humanized the digital experience without any humans. It's so obvious. You come on. Hey, you last time you bought this. It's been a while. Do you need more? I mean, they know that.
It's like you and I've talked about that frictionless experience, right?
Frictionless is really important too. And you're trying to eliminate friction, and you're trying to create an optimal experience at every touch point. Once again, we talked about that a moment ago. We also mentioned impact points. What's happening behind the scenes that's making that touch point good? Is that baggage handler getting it to the right spot, on and on in the process to make sure it's there when the passenger lands at the destination? That's just a simple example. But if I call you for customer support, are you accessible? Do I have to wait on hold for an hour and 15 minutes?
Right.
There's all kinds of ways that you could analyze, that's friction for a customer. That's inconvenient. There's probably an easier process. Can I take out a step? In the book, I wrote Convenience Revolution to talk about taking out a step. If you really want to get your customer to sign up for your newsletter or get more information, every field of information that you ask, first name, last name, email address, zip code, what's your title at the company, every field is an extra piece of friction. And the Wall Street Journal figured if they wanted people to subscribe to their magazine, because you get so many free issues if you go online, so many free articles before they say, hey, it's time to subscribe. If they found out all they need is the person's email address, their name, and their credit card information. And once you get them, start asking for more information. But what they learned is that every extra field of information they asked for, hence a friction point, they saw a drop off in the, they call it cart abandonment when they abandon the cart. So that's an example of just something small. Accessibility. Are you, and sometimes that means if you're a physical store, handicap accessible, but are you accessible by hours of operation? If I call you at 2 a.m. and I need help, what's going to happen? I bought a ping pong table at a sporting goods store, and I got home and I was at like 7 o'clock at night. I'm trying to figure out, it's all these parts. What am I? And I'm struggling. So I go on and I call, and it says we're open from 9 to 5 or 8 to 5. I'm thinking, okay, when do most people build a ping pong table? They don't do it during the day when they're working. So perhaps these people are simply realizing they're marketing to the unemployed because those are the only ones available for customer support during the time. But what they did have, they said, if you are having trouble putting it together, go to Google and put the model number and the name of our company in there. And what happened is a video on YouTube came up. And it was because it's a German company. The guy on it had a lederhosen, was putting but I'm not joking about it. But it was really cool. It was all with music and no words. And I
you were able to just watch it. Yeah, we can. Yeah, it's amazing.
It was an amazing digital experience, and I loved it. So they recovered from not being accessible at 7 p.m. to making themselves accessible 24/7. So anyway, I share with you these examples. But so the original question, journey map, internal and external. Number 2, this is a culture. It's not a department. So you need to make sure that everybody in your company recognizes their role that they play in taking care of the customer, being part of the experience. I would say number 3 is proper training, because if you don't, and by the way, that's not a one-time shot. Training isn't something you did, it's something you do. And it's not like you've got to pull people out for a day every other week. No, give them one big dose of training. Maybe it's onboarding when they come on board the first time they work for you. And then sustainability means every so often, it's 4 or 5 minutes, maybe once every week or two. You have your weekly huddles. We have exercises that we teach our clients to do that take 3 to 5 minutes long that you do in your Monday morning huddle or your weekly huddle. So we have some clients that do it every day. And those are the people that become customer focused.
All right. So I was just taking some notes here, writing a couple things down because obviously it's always important. A couple stories came to mind that have happened. One, when you look at mapping out the customer journey, and again, because I specialized in marketing and how do you bridge the gap between your value propositions and your target market, and how do you increase your influence? How do you increase your subscribers? How do you increase your referral culture? How do you increase the average transaction? And of course, how do you generate sales? Well, customer experience is all part of that, right? And so one of the things it's on every level
you just mentioned,
right? Yep. And so what we do is when we start with a client, we'll work from suspect to prospect to qualified prospect to lead to a customer, and then of course to create advocates. And so it's interesting. I was doing this presentation at a keynote because, both you and I are Hall of Fame keynote speakers. We spend our time traveling around the world, speaking in front of large audiences and organizations that are looking at accelerating their growth. So shameless plug, but it's my show. We can both do it.
Hey,
so
and you're really good at it. And I highly recommend you. And I remember everybody I've ever recommended you to loves you.
So I was I was at a banking conference, and there's 500 people in the room, and I'm talking about the importance of customer experience, not from the level you do, but it's one piece of my talk for a few minutes, right? And so community banks, local banks, they pride themselves. Why do they compete against the big banks like Wells Fargo and Bank of America? What's the differentiator, right? And because we're in marketing, and they said, oh, it's customer service. Customer service is our differentiating factor. So you know me, I fly without a net. And so I said, hey, I'd like to get a volunteer. Can a volunteer join me on stage? This guy eagerly runs up, and he comes up, and I grab my cell phone, and I said, what's your bank's phone number? And he goes, what are you doing? I said, I want to go. I said, I want to call your bank. I said, so at first I had, and again, cause I do digital marketing, I pulled his website up, and the phone number was hard to find. The form didn't work. I mean, it was a mess, right? So I said, okay, your site's bad, but you've got 11 locations. You should have really great customer service. And so he's starting to get a little scared, and everybody in the room is like, you could hear a pin drop. And so I grabbed the phone and I dial his bank. And I have a lavalier mic right in front of me, so I'm holding the speakerphone up so everybody in the whole audience can hear the phone ringing and everything. So they answer the phone, and I said, hi, I'm Ford. I just moved to your community. I'm a local business owner, and I'd like to open up a commercial account. First thing she said was, who are you? So I repeated it. Then I said, I'm trying to open up. I'm interested in finding a community bank. You get the story. So fast forward, you guys understand. I'm trying to prospect to see how they answer the phone. They transferred me 3 times. When I finally got to the department, they didn't ask for my name. And I said, I'm really interested in, and you know what they said? Well, we have all that information on our website. You can just go to our website and pick. Oh. And I thought to myself, and so now the CEO is listening to this.
How did your volunteer feel at that moment?
Yeah. So the meeting planner is looking at me like, well, Ford, I hired you as a keynote speaker. I don't want you to embarrass our attendees. And for those of you listening, if you hire us, I'm not embarrassing them. It's public knowledge, right? So I said, okay, Chad, I know we've got a fumble here. Let's see if we can overcome it. And so we spent the next, few minutes talking about how we can do it. And he ended up being a long-term client. I flew to their organization multiple times, did on-site training. We redid their branding and their messaging. But the point is, there's this disconnect. There's this gap between what banks or what businesses think they're doing. They use the words customer experience. They use the words customer service. They put it all over their website, their differentiating thing. But then they have the most untrained people on the front line. They're not rewarded. They don't create the culture where their people can be rewarded. And so because they have a poor employee experience, then they have a poor customer experience. And then they wonder what's going on with their business when really, if they would have provided that frontline training like you and all your books do. And again, Shep's website is right here on the screen, everybody. So you'll see it right on the guest thing. It's right there, hyken.com. But your books have been amazing because they're easy to consume and easy to implement. And that's what I always like about what you have is, everybody can do it. So I know that's going to spark a lot of things you want to cover. And whenever you're ready to cover the 5 ways, we'll do that.
Right. Well, I just want to say something really cool that if this person came on the stage and you said, I'm putting you in the hot seat, we don't know what's going to happen. If it happens perfect, then you get to say, this is what it looks like.
Exactly. It always works.
Right. And if it doesn't happen like the way it should, you say, now look at what we're going to do to fix this.
Well, another thing too, as I asked him, Shep, I said, wouldn't you rather know? And so ultimately he wasn't happy. But ultimately, he was happy because it unlocked the opportunity that he could actually do something about it. And it's not his, I'm not going to say fault, we're not going to use those words, but we're so busy, working in our businesses that we're not working on. And of course, that's Michael Gerber's The E-Myth. So just for everybody listening, it's not ours. But it's so true, the concept of stepping back. And that's what I want our listeners to do in your customer experience is to step back and take a fresh look at opportunities where you can turn those potential moments of misery into magical moments that aren't over the top, that are just, like you said, what, 1, 2, 10% better than the rest.
Right. So two things I want to do real quick. I want to touch on this, and I want to get to the 5-step process. And Ford, you and I had dinner together. I don't know.
Oh, I remember.
Years ago.
I know this story.
Remember the guy in the restaurant and the salad? That's
I know where we're going.
Started. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
I got to share that story.
Go for it.
It ties in. Right. Well, first, when that brand, that bank, a community bank, was making a statement to their customer, that's branding, right?
Yes.
And I heard a great, a brand is a promise delivered. A brand is this, a brand is that. Well, good companies, their brand, they make a promise. Great companies keep their promise.
Yeah, that's profound.
That there's a difference. You got to, brand integrity, if you want to call that. All right, let's talk moments of misery. Okay. By the way, every moment of truth you have is an opportunity to go one of 3 ways. It's either average, satisfactory, ordinary, not good. People don't complain about ordinary, but if there's something better, they're going to disappear one day.
Right.
Positive moments of truth I refer to as moments of magic. It's anything that's better than average, even the tiniest bit. Sometimes, as we mentioned at the beginning, over the top, or just, hey, you called me back quickly. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Okay. Or you have a moment of misery. And the moment of misery could be a problem, a complaint, friction of any kind. I call you, you put me on hold for 7 minutes. At what point am I going to be frustrated? Well, we know from our research that after a certain amount of time, a pretty good number of customers, if you make them wait 7, 8, 10 minutes, they're going to be frustrated. So why they're already upset or concerned about something, why make it worse? Anyway, moment of misery, you've got this problem. There are 5 things that should happen. And this is so common sense. You need to apologize, acknowledge, or acknowledge and apologize. In other words, you'd say something like, wow, I can't believe that happened. I'd be upset if that happened to me too. I am so sorry that happened. All right. Number 3, you fix or discuss what's going to happen. Number 4, you own the situation. Even it might not be your fault. It's still your opportunity. And by the way, you may not be the one to fix it. So if you hand it off to somebody, it's the way you hand off that allows you for somebody to say, you know what, they really took care of me. And then finally, number 5 is you do it with urgency. So the example I want to use, it's very frontline focused. And I've got examples from manufacturing, everything, but you and I were having dinner in Dallas at this really nice steak restaurant.
Yes.
The server, the moment, and there were 8 of us there in this round table. The moment this server came up to us, I knew we were in for a bad experience.
And this was a high end. This is just to set the stage. Each person was going to probably spend $100. Like, this was not a $20. It was a high end restaurant.
Right. We all ordered our salads, and the salads come, and this is what happens. They're beautiful salads. They're overflowing with lettuce and tomatoes and croutons and whatever they have on the salad, right? Except for yours, Ford. You were sitting next to me, and there's like 2/3 of the salad must have been missing. I mean, it was like this little.
It's like, I think what they did is they made a bowl for like 6 people, but then decided to make it to 8. So the first 7 got the salads, and I got like some scraps. It was visibly.
It was
crazy.
So visibly. So I remember you saying, "Excuse me, sir, look at my salad." Right. And the guy looks at it, he goes, "Oh," and then this is what he said. Do you remember what he said?
Yeah, he said something.
I don't make them.
I just bring them. Yeah. And this is I said to and then we called the manager. You keep going, but that's exactly what happened.
No, you looked over at me and say, "What do you think, Shep? You're gonna have something to write about next week."
Well, what they didn't realize is what you didn't tell him is that the people sitting at the table were all members of the $1 Million Speakers Group. We were all, very successful Hall of Fame or top producing speakers, influencers on branding, customer service, leadership, and so forth. Yep. And so they had just created this experience where we have large voices. And so we called the manager over, and I said, we weren't doing it to like, oh, I'm all that in a bag of chips. That wasn't the point. It was just to say, is this consistent of your training? Is this what you're doing? Right.
So he wanted me to come back again. I said, I'm supposed to come back tomorrow night with a very famous author, Harvey McKay, and his team of other famous authors. And I said, honestly, I need to recommend a different restaurant. He says, I promise you, if you come back tomorrow night, it'll be so much different. But here's what happened. When that guy said, it's like,
I don't make it, I just bring it. Yeah, right. He didn't take responsibility.
He didn't do anything. Number one, he didn't apologize. Okay. There was acknowledgement when he responded to you, but I don't count that as acknowledgement, right? So there was apology. Fix it. There was no discussion of fixing it. Bad attitude, the right attitude. I always loved that attitude of ownership. And then urgency, there was nothing urgent about it. He just urgently walked away. The right server would have said, oh my, first of all, the right server probably would have noticed it before it went down. On the
right. He would have brought it out.
Let's assume he or she didn't notice, and it goes down there. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't see that. I am so sorry. Let me go back and get you one right now. Okay, so what happened in those 2 or 3 sentences, they didn't necessarily go through the process, but they acknowledged, apologized, discussed the resolution. I'm going to go back. Okay. Right. I'm going to go back. I didn't blame it on the people for making it wrong. So I took the right attitude, and I'm going to do it right now. So acknowledge, apologize, fix it, or discuss the resolution with the right attitude, be positive. And I'll add to that, act like you're owning the experience and take as quick of action as you can. When you do that, oftentimes you not only fix the problem, but you renew the confidence, often to a level that's even higher than if the problem had never happened at all, which doesn't mean you should intentionally give yourself the opportunity. Right. But you see what I'm saying? Hey, all right. That's what our customers love when we know. So here's what you want them to say. Go back all the way to the beginning of our conversation where we talked about amazing being consistent and predictable. We want our customers to say things like, they're always so helpful. They're always knowledgeable. They're always friendly. They always get back to me. That word always followed by something that's natural, expected. And get this one, the final one. And even when there's a problem, I can always count on them to take care of me. And when you have customers saying that about you, you're creating the experience that gets them to say, I'll be back.
All right, so we have a question here that came in. Let me see if I can put it up on the screen. So Alex wants to know, what's your opinion on saying, the customer's always right? How do you handle circumstances where a customer is basically weaponizing that the customer's always right and they're trying to manipulate the situation? Well, what do you say to them?
Sure. Well, first of all, I would never say, no, the customer is not always right.
Right.
But that is the truth. The customer is not always right. But they are always the customer. So you must find a way to treat them with respect and dignity. And by the way, if they're coming at you hard and they're angry, there's techniques, and we can spend hours talking about the different techniques to de-escalate the anger, to recreate the confidence. I mean, the overarching theme is, acknowledge, apologize, fix it, own it with the right attitude, and do it quickly. But there's lots that can happen. I'll give you a great example of a customer coming at you, and I think this happens. They come at you, they're upset, something's wrong. First thing you do is acknowledge and apologize. Say, okay, I hear you've got the problem. I'm really sorry that happened. I'd be upset too. Here's what I want to do. I'm hopefully going to be the guy that can help you out, but let's start from the very beginning. Now, most people will say, don't make them repeat their story. But if you set it up like, I'm going to be the one that help you, let's start over. And you start to hear them calm down. Oftentimes it's an opportunity for them to vent, get a little bit more comfortable, and you get clarity on what the real issue is. And then you start to dissect and talk about what you're going to do to resolve it. And it may not be something that takes place right now. Years ago, I remember going to a furniture store and buying a dining room set for my new home. And it was supposed to be there in 4 to 6 weeks. Great. Fine. Guess what? Thanksgiving is in about 2.5 months. So if it gets there in 6 weeks, my dining room is going to look great a month before my Thanksgiving dinner. The week before the Thanksgiving dinner, I didn't have my dining room set. So I talked to the guy, the owner of the furniture store, and he apologized profusely. And he says, Shep, I know you're going to have people over for Thanksgiving. Why don't I do this? First of all, I'm going to obviously things are back ordered.
Right.
But for right now, I've got a dining room set that looks pretty close to what you have. Let me deliver it to you. We'll set it up and you keep it until your set comes.
That's real service.
Problem solved.
Yeah.
Who do you think
amazing.
I bought furniture from for the rest of my house? For the
you
rest,
you went from a customer to an advocate.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. And by the way, if you're in St. Louis, that's Carroll House Furniture.
There you go.
And the guy that runs it is the son of the man that helped me years and years ago.
Well, one of the things I did is I put up on you're famous for being a research based thought leader. I write a lot of research papers and we both have used those services. So if you're interested in getting more research, obviously you can go to Hyken.com. But he's got his annual report that he gives, and you can go to that. I'm putting the link on it. So if you're watching the video right now, if you watch the video right now, you can pause it. If you're listening to this as a podcast, it's at Hyken.com/research, and that's HYKEN.
You don't need to put it at the top. It says research. Just Hyken.com. Click on research. Boom, and it's
you're
free.
there.
Download it. There's lots of interesting stats and facts. Everything from really important reasons. It gives you the reasons why you would want to deliver a better experience, a convenient experience, how it builds trust, but it also has some pretty interesting facts like, did you know, I think it's 42% of customers that we surveyed would rather go to the dentist than call customer support.
Yeah, didn't you have that's fun. I think you had another one too. You had something like people would rather clean the bathroom than deal with a dentist.
Clean the toilet. Yeah. They'd rather clean a toilet
than answer a disgruntled customer.
Our next year's, we have a couple of ones that we've added some new ones. One of my favorite, and by the way, we have, it's a big, extensive questionnaire, and we interview over 1,000 consumers, so it's really valid statistically. But I like to put some fun stats in there, and one of them was true or false. Have you ever called customer support and found yourself screaming into the phone, representative, or agent?
Yeah, mine's a little bit different when I'm.
Yeah. Well, that's because you're Ford.
That's it. It's just I end up wanting to make sure I do it. So I want to put a question. I retyped it that came in on one of the other platforms. And as we're going on our 30 minutes, we're going to go a few minutes later, and then I want you to think about what your closing thoughts would be to leave the organizations. But make sure for sure, everybody, and I'm going to switch screens here. I got to look at the buttons, that you take a look at the 5 ways. Remember, acknowledge, apologize, fix it or discuss resolution, right attitude, be positive. And so I got this fancy switcher, and I'm using a 3x5 card. So that's just great.
Sometimes that's the best.
It worked. It works, right? Get it done. So what can organizations do that, they've had supply chain issues, they've had to pay people more money, they've had to raise their prices, we got the economy, there's all these internal and external forces, and people have to raise their prices, but what can they do to ease that gap? I mean, I have some ideas, obviously. I would want to answer this, but I'm going to ask you, what can they do to avoid losing customers if they raise their prices?
Well, first of all, there's a bunch of things that are happening. All of the issues that you have just mentioned not only force companies to perhaps raise prices in order to stay in business, because if your costs exceed what you pay, what you're charging, there's no company, that's just not a good business model.
Yeah, but you can't sell it below cost and make it up on volume, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we lose money on every sale, but we make it up in volume, I think is the way it goes. So here's a couple of things. Number one, all of these issues are creating customer experience problems too. And the quickest, most direct answer I can give you is be proactive. When you know there's a problem, when you know there's an issue, when you know they're supposed to receive their item in 2 weeks and you're not going to get it from the manufacturer until 3, you've got to be transparent and proactive with the communication. Number two, if you're going to raise prices, people, they know today inflation's inflation. They're seeing it everywhere. So they're becoming a little less price sensitive to the shock of a higher price. We work with a client, and this was before inflation issues. It was about 4 years ago. So you may remember President Trump at the time, so 4 or 5 years ago, said anybody that's using parts from out of the country or anything that's being imported, there's going to be a tariff, a tax that you're going to have to pay. And this particular company had to pay for a lot of the parts for what they built. And they just were very transparent with their customers. They said, hey, everyone, here's what we're experiencing. The parts are coming in from wherever overseas. We have to pay this extra tax. We're going to pass on the tax. We have to pass on the tax to you. We're not raising our prices, increasing our margins.
Right.
And so he was very transparent. And guess what? It was fine. I went to a restaurant recently, and I noticed the prices were much more expensive. And this is what the owner of the restaurant told me. He goes, Shep, we actually change the prices every week now, depending on what things cost.
Oh, wow.
Whoa. How cool is that? He says, so right now you can see steak is actually pretty reasonably priced, but that
Right.
seafood that, people are ordering,
Right.
oh my gosh, the price of whatever it is just skyrocketed. And obviously we can't operate and under the model that you just mentioned, lose money and make up for it in volume. It
that
doesn't
doesn't
work
work.
like that.
Those clients,
Yeah.
you can do a loss leader. Like you can like you and I send out books, so we offer. There's book promotions that
That's
say,
marketing.
get a free copy of my book. Just pay shipping and handling. Well, you might be losing money on that or just breaking even, but it's how do you build that relationship for the long-term value? So that's a little bit different strategy, but certainly in business we can't do that. All right. So as we get ready to wrap up the show, what are some closing thoughts or takeaways? Well, you've given us a ton of great resources, and obviously, check Shep out. We're basically on the circuit together. Sometimes he'll be the keynote, sometimes I'll be the keynote. We have different topics, of course. I speak on, business growth and marketing. Shep is the master. I mean, when something goes wrong as a customer fail, Shep's one of the people that they call for news and media for his advice and insights. Just look at his social media following, and I'm going to shameless plug to his staff is amazing, who helps him support him. But Shep is the one who answers the questions and does all the feedback. So what are some closing thoughts on, we know what happens. Everybody knows what examples of bad customer experience are. They know now that to be successful with the customer experience, to enhance it, they just need to be a little bit better than everybody else. Because their competition is
better than average all
bar.
the time.
Yeah, the bar is, so say that again, better than average.
A little bit better than average, at least all of the time. And I even say that sometimes you don't even have to be better than average. You just have to meet the expectation of what most customers want. There's always going to be outliers that say, well, I know he called me back in 10 minutes. People go, well, that's amazing. No, if I wanted it in 2 minutes. Well, that's
right. Right. You got to be
so
okay, all right. So that makes sense.
Outlier. So my final thoughts would be this. We've talked about a lot that I want to emphasize, but it could all be wrapped up in saying that customer service is not the department. It's a philosophy to be embraced by every employee of the organization. Everyone has their job, right? We talked about it. If you're not directly supporting somebody, you're supporting or a customer, you're supporting somebody that is, or you're part of the process. Training. Everybody needs to be trained. Everybody, even the guy in the warehouse who never sees a customer, all his job is to pull. If he doesn't pack the box right, customer has a bad experience. And whose fault was that, right? So everybody gets trained properly. And I really want you to be thinking about what I call the loyalty question. And customer loyalty is a big thing. People think, how do I create loyalty? It is about a lifetime if you can get it. That's the ultimate goal. But let's break it down into something much more simple. Customer loyalty is really about getting somebody to come back the next time, every time. So here's my question that you should get everybody to ask themselves. Is the way I'm behaving right now, is that going to get that customer to come back the next time they need whatever it is that I sell or do? Makes sense? So it's about the next time, every time. And when you find yourself in that moment, and we were talking, the original concept of today's call was, let's talk about how you turn misery into magic.
Right.
That's what you need to be thinking about. If you're in that contentious moment, that heated moment, is the way I'm responding to this customer going to get them to come back the next time? And by the way, in the best of times, is the way we take care of the customers every day going to get them to come back? Repeat business is the key to customer loyalty, because that's where it starts. So those are my thoughts.
That is amazing. And as we wrap this up, I'm going to try to push the right button here on the right time. So we have Fordify Live Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Central on multiple platforms. And you've been listening to Shep Hyken and Ford Saeks here as we have discussed ways that you can improve and enhance and fix a fumble and everything else. So if you're interested, check us out. I hope we're going to look at all the comments. Oh, we have one more. No, we have that. I got all the questions in there. So we are good. I'm going to hit the outro music. Shep, thank you. I know both of us need some sleep. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining. I know you're going to, I'll be at an event this weekend and you're not there, but I need to get to St. Louis and so we can go to a hockey game or have some fun. All right. Tell Cindy I love her and she's amazing. And I'll see everybody next week on Fordify Live. And thank you so much. We are out of here. Bye, Shep.